Hello, welcome to the channel. This weekend my library had a huge blowout sale of all their old books they wanted to clear out. So books were about 25 cents to $1 a piece, and so I have a huge haul. Most of these books I picked very quickly because that's kind of the atmosphere and the way that it goes. You're mainly picking books based on cover and summary blurb. This is my preferred method for buying books because it's just so economic and it's a good way to kind of, I found, branch out and kind of pick things that I wouldn't risk normally because it's so cheap. I don't feel wary of doing it, and also the whole buying things fairly quickly, picking them out fairly quickly, and having it be such a low price is very conducive for me being willing to try things outside my usual genre. Whereas like requesting things from a library, which is even more economical, you have to read it within a certain amount of time, whereas these, I don't have to read it as soon as I buy it. I can read them whenever, and I'm much more likely to pick up a book that I'm not sure I'll enjoy if I happen to be in an adventurous mood. And if I'm in an adventurous mood and then have to request something from a library, wait for it to come, go get it, I'm much like the mood will probably have passed by the time I get it, and then I'm not as likely to read it. So this has proven a good way to get myself to read weird and interesting books. And also a good way to collect books I end up enjoying very much, like both A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Mist and Fury and Uprooted were all, and Bitter Blue for that matter, were all from library book sales. So let's get started. So this came from what I believe was called the youth section. It's a middle grade book called The Youngest Templar, and first of all, I'm quite interested in the Knights Templar. I just find the whole thing fascinating, and the Crusades. I find the Crusades really interesting. Finding out more about what went on with all of that very strange time. And it's got somebody dual wielding either long knives or short swords on the front, and I like that quite a lot. Plus it's part of a series, which is promising because I always like to spend more time with characters than is available in a single novel. So, and then in no particular order, this one happens to be another middle grade book. What's it called? Rowan Hood Returns by Nancy Springer. This series, actually, this is the final one of a series. I read this when I was a kid, and haven't actually reread it for years because I think the ending actually kind of made me sad or unsatisfied, maybe? I'm not sure, but that will put a damper on me rereading things, because then I think about it the whole time I'm reading the series. Like the most recent books that Tamora Pierce has written that take place in Tortal, the series named after dogs, Terrier, Bloodhound, Mastiff. I really didn't like Mastiff, and it hurt my feelings a lot, so I haven't read any of her work since, even though I really like a lot of them, and I talk about them in my battles video because I really like the way that she writes battles, and I really like her books, but all of them remind me of what happened in that last book, so I need to get over it and reread those so that I can put it behind me. But anyway, back to the task at hand. Yet another middle grade. I have been quite interested in books and stories taking place in East Asia recently. I recently read The River of Stars, I believe, and I loved it so much. So I'm excited to read other fiction that is set in a similar era / place. I'm also interested in East Asian history, which we'll be getting to further in the video with some of my other choices. But also this one, of course, Sisters of the Sword, Journey Through Fire by Maya Snow. It's women with swords. Then we have, this was in the old books section, and I've actually just seen it in a video by one of my YouTuber friends who, Nicole, anyway, she's really cool and she has good taste, and she's a nice lady, and she recommended this as one of her favorite middle grade series. It was in the section of 1970s or older, I believe. So it doesn't look that old, but maybe the first printing was that old, because I think this is the second edition at least. It says copyright 2013. It may have been misplaced. It may have been put back there by somebody who decided they didn't want to buy it at some point. But anyway, gorgeous cover. Look at that cover. All I saw at first was this part, but I saw it up here. There's a bit of this, and then I pulled it out and had all this gorgeousness. And then I read on the back that when J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and Charles Williams are asked by H.G. Wells to become caretakers of the Imaginarium Geographica, an atlas of imaginary places, their lives and the lives of their readers will never be the same. Which anything having to do with the Inklings is like so what I want to know about and read, and just give it to me. So that's why I picked that one up. The First Dragon by James A. Owen from the Chronicles of the Imaginarium Geographica. And then this one I got in the science fiction and fantasy section. So it could be YA, it could be adult. It looks YA to me. P.W. Cantonese, The Books of Umber Dragon Games, which I like books. I like dragons. It's got a dragon on the cover. It's got a guy in armor with an axe on the cover. Bag was getting quite heavy. I ended up with 16 books and paid $14. So I was kind of grabbing things quite quickly. But this is part of the series, so that's also promising. And I think this is one of the ones. Ooh, what did I just see? What did I just? Oh, there. I really like books that have these kind of insert things, like Del Toro books have a lot of these kind of inserts that are like messages, or in Del Toro there's a lot of puzzles that you can figure out alongside the characters, so I really like those. And then these two next books I'm going to talk about kind of go together. This one, Love in a Headscarf by Shalina Janmohamed. Shalina Zara Janmohamed. It says that it's a memoir, and on the back it says, when Shalina Janmohamed, an Oxford-educated Muslim living in the bubbling ethnic mix of North London, opted for the traditional arranged route to finding a partner, she never suspected it would be the journey of her life. Through 10 long years of matchmaking, buxom aunties, countless mismatches, and outraging dating disasters, Shalina discovers more about herself and her faith, including that sometimes being true to her religion means challenging tradition. And lately I've been really interested in finding out more about Muslim women and what life is like for them, and kind of their perspectives on things. So this is kind of a little introduction into that I would have had a lot harder time getting into just searching out stuff on my own instead of grabbing something in a library sale. But the next one is set in, I think it's set in older times, called The City of Veils by Zoe Ferraris, possibly, if I'm pronouncing that right. But it says in some of the quotes that Zoe Ferraris delivers the Muslim Da Vinci Code, and so the Da Vinci Code is not, it's kind of not in my kind of stuff that I usually read. I like conspiracies and stuff, but I don't like scary stuff that much, or a lot of nastiness. But because I want to know more about Middle Eastern goings on and what life is like there, I thought that would be interesting. So before I bought it, I looked at the inside cover blurb, and so it's about this woman who is a coroner's assistant, or she works in the coroner's office, but she's not like a full coroner, but she's one of the few women there, and apparently a lot of, in this story, it's a fiction, in this story, and I don't know how accurate this is to real life, but it's in Saudi Arabia. I'll just read a little bit of the blurb to you. When the body of a brutally beaten woman is found on the beach, the city's detectives are ready to dismiss the case as another unsolvable murder. Chillingly common in a city where the veils of conservative Islam keep women as anonymous in life as the victim is in death. If this is another housemaid killed by her employer, finding the culprit will be all but impossible. But this coroner assistant woman, one of the few women in the Jeddah medical examiner's office. I'm not sure what place she holds there, but she is determined to find justice for this particular young woman who's been murdered, and apparently they are not able to identify her. I'm not sure why, but she's going to try to figure out who killed her, figure out who she is, then who killed her, and she ends up unearthing, along with her friend, this big conspiracy thing. So I'm very interested in reading that. Fluffy has joined us. Another one is this guy, which I believe I got in the, what's it called? Junior section again. And it is the girl who circumnavigated Fairyland in a ship of her own making. Which, first of all, it's about a girl, so obviously that's a pro. It's got a dragon on the cover, and it's about Fairyland. So those are three things right off the bat. Plus, I generally am pleased with middle grade things. Some of my biggest issues with books, if I like the writing and I like the type of stuff that's going on, like if it's a fantasy with good dragons and good battles and whatever, a risk I always take when I read a new book is if I'm going to get attached to characters and then they're going to die, which doesn't tend to happen in middle grade books, so they are almost always less risky as far as my heart is concerned for trying new authors and new things. So that's why I have an easier time picking them and trusting that they're going to be good and that they're worthwhile. So I have yet another middle grade book to try. And speaking of middle grade, this I was actually thinking of, weirdly enough, when I was going to the library sale. I was thinking of this book, which I feel like is a series, but I'm not totally sure. And it's called The Castle in the Attic, and it is about a kid who has a castle in his attic. And much like I have dreamed of all my life, he shrinks down and becomes a part of life at this castle. And this, oh my gosh, so amazing and wonderful. And I only read it maybe once when I was quite young, and I forgot what it was called, and so I was kind of worried I'd never find it again, which has happened with a few of my favorite books from childhood, but I just happened to see this at the sale, and so this piece of my childhood has been reclaimed, and I'm very happy about that. I totally don't remember the plot. I only remember the basics of there's a castle in the attic, he turns into a little person and is transported into the world of this little toy castle. So I'm very excited to rediscover that. And, ooh, yeah! I haven't talked about them on this channel much, but I talked about them quite a lot on my Instagram, the Dragonology, Wizardology, Monsterology series. They're like encyclopedias of made-up stuff about dragons and monsters and wizards. And they're drawn a lot from various myths around the world, but they're also made up by the author. And there's a lot of drawings and very nice illustrations like this one, and field notes and little inserts that you can actually take out and touch, and they're very what's it called? Not touchy, but kinetic, maybe, where you there's a lot of textures and stuff that you can feel, and like a little kid's book. They're children's, but they're just, I love them very much. And so I didn't know that this was a thing, which is called Dragonology Chronicles, the Dragon Diary, and the art style is very similar to the Dragonology books, and it's, I looked inside it, and apparently it's a field journal, which is basically what the Dragonology textbook type things are based on, somebody who has gone around learning about dragons throughout the world. And so I am very, very excited to read this and get a little bit more of that world that I enjoy so much. You're sweet. I don't know if you can hear her purring, but she's a little purry baby. Yeah, yeah. She also likes to catch your hand when you're petting her and chew on it and lick it. Yeah, she's chewing on my finger. Yeah, chew, that's great. Okay, and to do a little bit of a change, I picked this one. All I could see was the binding there, and you can tell it's quite pretty and very old-fashioned looking, and it is in fact quite the old book. You can see from you can kind of see from the what's this called, the font, and just the way it's written, and the very yellow paper, and also how the edging is all, you know, that like that. I'm not sure how to describe it, but it doesn't have a title on the cover, only on the edging there. And Profiles in Courage reminded me of a little very old book that I got that I haven't showed you on this channel, but is also on my Instagram, link below. That is about various hero types throughout the ages and why they're considered heroes, and it just kind of caught my attention because it reminded me of that old book that I bought in England. It's a tiny book because I had very little room in my luggage, especially weight-wise, so I couldn't be buying big old books. And so this immediately reminded me of that, and the red and gold I really liked. I thought it'd be nice. It would be, even if I didn't end up liking the content, it would be a very nice edge for my Bookstagram and for various pictures of books. I opened it and it looked just really boring, and kind of glorifying of war and very masculine type stuff. But then I saw that it was apparently written by John F. Kennedy, and so that made me give it another look, because I do somewhat like John F. Kennedy. And then I found out it's apparently a bunch of his works, or his essays and stuff, and it's just compiled by someone else. By John F. Kennedy. Yeah, it's by John F. Kennedy. I didn't know he wrote books. And so that's very interesting. And it even has a, which I didn't even notice this before I bought it, but apparently it has a freaking, what are they called? A ribbon bookmark. So those are always fun, and it's got pictures and stuff like that. So I thought that was interesting enough for, because it doesn't have its extra out of cover thing. It was on even more sale, so it was like 50 cents. So for 50 cents, I definitely would like to have that. And then we have Desert Conquest by Russell Hill. once again, an old book, and it is apparently, ooh, I actually got this one, it was in the historical section, and I was kind of thinking about this because the cover looked kind of fun, and old books are always interesting to kind of see how things used to be done, and it's non-fiction, and it's about, from what I got, it's about wars. It says that this book has been produced in full compliance with all government regulations for the conservation of paper, metal, and other essential materials. Copyright 1943. Which, so during World War II, and it must have been when they were rationing. That is so cool. So anyway, just even as a piece of history, it's interesting, and in addition it's also about history type stuff. And I don't really know what it's about other than war. I don't know where the war is, although I'm getting vibes that it was in either the Middle East or Egypt. And what caught me on it, what made me make the final decision to get it, was I flipped open to the cover and found this, a fold-out map. I can't resist a fold-out map. So, yeah, I was definitely going to get that as soon as I saw that. Let me see if I can figure this out. Okay, Northern Africa looks like where the wars were going on. It looks like it was World War II type stuff because there's a bunch of Nazi flags. So, yeah, fascinating. And then got this one, Japan, the Story of a Nation, also from the historical section, because I've been very interested in East Asian literature lately and knowing more about East Asia and the history of it. So it's by Edwin O. Reichauer. I don't know how to say that, but I'm very interested in finding out some more about the history of Japan. And it's got maps in it too, look at that. I love books with maps. All books should have maps. I'm very disappointed because the Ranger's Apprentice series that I talk about in my April wrap-up video could really use maps, because they're always talking about where things are in relation to other countries and they're journeying through countries to get to other countries all the time. A map would be super helpful. They need to have maps. Anyway, this one was from the fantasy section, and it is a collection of short stories. And I didn't even notice this before I bought it, but it would have convinced me even more to buy it. But it's got at least one work by Ursula K. Le Guin, who I didn't even know she was a thing until she died, and people started talking about all the stuff she's written. So now I'm very interested in Ursula and very excited to find out what she writes like, and soon to start reading her novels. So this will be a nice introduction to her writing style. And also it's kind of a collection of old fantasy and fantasy that kind of shaped the genre even before Tolkien started writing. So that's very exciting too, the history of the fantasy genre. Only two more. This one was also from the fantasy section and pretty much caught my eye because all I could see was this part, and it had a guy with a crown, and it said Empire of Thorns on it. So I like Emperor, not Empire, Emperor of Thorns, and I really like empires, and I really like crowns and stuff. And so from looking inside and stuff, I got that it was an epic fantasy type thing, and it's book 3, so I probably won't read it until I have gotten book 1 from the library and checked it out, but excited for that eventually at some point. And then this one also I got for the cover, which is a very old-timey type cover, if you can tell that. It's kind of in that old style. I'm not sure what decade it was very common in, but like from the 60s through the 80s, I think they had. This isn't a prime example, but it's along those lines. Those sort of artistic. Ooh, it has a map. But I really like the cover, even though the lady on the front is wearing illogical, sexy armor. You know, what are you gonna do? It's not the artist. It's not the author's fault. The artist did that. At least I hope that the actual armor isn't described that way. But very much with the Treason Keep by Jennifer Fallon. Like, I didn't even notice that it was a female author, which I very much appreciate. But it's book 2 of a series. I like series, and it just this is one of the ones that I checked inside to make sure the wording wasn't cringy, which it wasn't. And yeah, sounds very interesting, and I'm very excited to experience that series. Plus, it's got a gorgeous cover, which will go good on Bookstagram. And so that is my book haul. All of those I got for $14. I'm not sure if I already said, but yeah. 16 books for $14. And you may be aware, I don't know if I've talked about it yet, but I have a little bit of a crowding issue with my bookshelves. I'm storing quite a lot of my books in stacks, either on the floor or on my rocking chair, which I've kind of turned into a book stack with a waterproof thing on top of it, so it's now a side table. But and I don't even have, even before this book haul, I didn't have enough space for my books. I was piling them around on the floor, and so now my mom has agreed to let me have a bookshelf that we have been storing our video VHSs on, and a lot of them we don't watch anymore. They're from when we were kids, and so I'm going to clear one of those out and use that for these and some of the other ones that I've got on the floor. So that's my haul. I hope you enjoyed. If you have read any of these books or any of the series that these books are a part of and would like to recommend some of them that I start with, or that you liked or that you didn't like, I'd love to know what you thought of them. Tell me your thoughts on branching out beyond the genres you usually like. Have you ever done it? Do you think it's a worthwhile thing to do? And do you have issues finding space on your shelves for all your print books? Hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!